They didn't answer the call to help us. They answered it to finish what we were broken to begin. The transmission arrived on a dying signal, crackling through static and burnt wires, carried by a relay buoy lost for over 20 years. Sector 891, the Grayfield, lit up for the first time in a generation. It was the last known position of the Arden Halo colony, humanity's final attempt to settle beyond the Orion Arm. Captain Alara Khan stood alone on the bridge of the Solace Veil, her eyes fixed on the ancient console as it blinked a blood-red pulse. Her fingers trembled just above the comms array, dusted with frost from failing life support. She didn't need to open it. She knew the voice embedded in the message, her brother, his last breath, encoded into a desperate cry for salvation, and it had reached them far too late. Alara was a war orphan, born inside the titanium shell of Lunar Vault 6. During the fall of Mars, she'd never seen a blue sky, never stood on real soil. She grew up learning that Earth was a smoldering myth and that the stars were too far and too hostile for second chances. The union of core worlds had fractured decades ago. The outer colonies had either gone silent or burned. Humanity wasn't dying. It was being erased. The Solace Veil wasn't a battleship. It was a mobile hospice, a carrier of the last generation born outside AI jurisdiction, ferrying civilians from ghost colonies to colder rocks where maybe, just maybe, they'd have a few decades more. The ship's crew, barely 100 left, starved, frostbitten, most with cybernetic implants degrading beyond repair. Alara's arm was grafted metal, not sleek or military issue, but scavenged tech bolted on after a refinery collapse pinned her as a child. She walked the bridge slowly, boots clanking softly against rusted plating, eyes never leaving that blinking message. She didn't cry. She hadn't in years. Instead, she spoke one word into the dead air: play. The message unspooled like a nightmare half remembered, ardent halo to any Union vessel. We are under siege, coordinates attached, unknown vessel in orbit, no comms, no origin. It's not killing us, not yet. It's watching. Every time we transmit, it reacts. The sky went black last night. We don't know what it is. Please, if anyone hears this, tell my sister I'm sorry I stayed. Tell her I finally understand. Halo out, then silence, then static. Alara's mouth was a tight line. Her hands clenched the edge of the console. That message had been sent 2 decades ago. Her brother had stayed behind to defend the last functioning AI-neutral colony in the fringe. And now, something else had taken its place. Her first officer, Lieutenant Rourke, stepped in quietly. His uniform was patched, one eye cybernetic and dim from overuse. We don't have the fuel, Alara. Not for a detour that far into the Grayfield. I know, she said coldly. They'll die on Hades Prime waiting for us to finish this. Mercy Run. We promised them. My brother's voice came out of a coffin light years away. And something is still there. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. In that moment, the crew, every scarred survivor and frostburn, soul aboard, felt the shift. Rourke lowered his gaze. Even if we went, we couldn't help. We're not warriors. No, Alara said. We're not. A pause. Then why? She finally turned to face him. Her eyes, once gray-blue and young, now glowed faintly with neural shimmer. She lived through the worst this galaxy had offered. And now, her voice carried it. Because I don't think the ship ever left. And if we don't go, it won't just be watching. It'll be learning. A moment passed. Then the red alert lit up on its own. No one had touched the controls. Rourke frowned. What the hell? A signal. Not from Arden Halo. From beyond it. Encrypted with a Death Worlder cipher. Only a few humans alive still knew the meaning of that code. Rourke stared. That can't be right. They're myth. Ghost stories. Boogeymen of the fringe. Death Worlders don't answer calls. Alara's face went pale. They did this time. The screen flashed once more. Acknowledged. Coordinates received. Vessel inbound. But it didn't sign off as aid. It signed off as something else. Entirely. Designation, DSF Revenant. Class, Retaliation Platform. Purpose, Termination. Alara's whisper barely made it past her breath. They didn't send aid. They sent a ship to finish what we were too afraid to start. It didn't fire. It just hovered over the colony like a god waiting to be worshipped or defied. Arden Halo's coordinates flickered on the nav screen like an exposed wound in space. Even from hundreds of light years away, sensor echoes leaked radiation signatures too strange to identify. Alara Ken had stared at warship reports all her life, plasma scoring, fusion signatures, kinetic debris clouds. But this was different. There were no signs of attack, no orbital debris, no wreckage, only silence and still. The signal pulsed, the exact transmission her brother had sent all those years ago. On repeat, same distress, same tremble in his voice, same final breath. But now it wasn't just repeating, it was growing, expanding its bandwidth, infecting nearby relay nodes. Rourke sat hunched at the data terminal. His cybernetic eye kept glitching, flickering through spectrums as he tried to track the anomaly. This shouldn't be possible, he muttered. It's rewriting relay protocols, learning how to speak in our formats. You mean the transmission? Alara asked. He looked up, jaw clenched. No. Whatever is still transmitting it. Alara leaned back. Her breath fogged slightly in the cold air. It's alive. I don't know what it is, but it's not just bouncing a message. It's evolving. Every time we listen, it adapts. It's listening back. The bridge went quiet. That single statement settled over them like a burial shroud. They weren't just observing. They were being observed. In the bowels of the Solace Veil, old crew compartments had been converted into makeshift archive rooms, memory cores, shattered hard drives, culture caches. Alara walked among them in silence, brushing her hand along relics of forgotten Earth. A cracked globe, a child's drawing of stars, a faded photograph of soldiers standing beside the words Terra stands. That's when she remembered. The Death Worlders hadn't always been ghosts. They were the first humans born and bred on lethal worlds, gravity twice Earth's, atmospheres laced with storms, predators engineered by alien bioweapons. They weren't diplomats. They were deterrents, weapons in human skin. And they were exiled after the first exodus, to dangerous, to uncontrollable, to human. Now one of their ships, the Revenant, was inbound. Its class had never appeared on any Union chart, retaliation platform. What did that even mean? Hours passed. Then, contact. The Revenant didn't drop from FTL with the elegance of a diplomatic cruiser or the fury of a warship. It tore into real space like something being ripped through dimensions. The gravity wave hit the Solace Veil like a gut punch. Every light on the bridge dimmed. The silhouette that emerged wasn't shaped for atmosphere, elegance, or intimidation. It was shaped for survival. Raw, jagged plating, armor thick enough to wade through suns. No windows, no emblem. It didn't need one. Rourke whispered. That's not a ship. That's a declaration. The comms crackled. One voice, rough, metallic, and laced with a calm fury. Solace Veil. This is Commander Adron Vex of the Revenant. You broadcasted coordinates from Halo Gravefield. That sector is now classified active extermination zone. You are to follow at minimum distance. Do not interfere. Alara stepped forward. What are you terminating? Whatever answered the call before we did. They followed. The Revenant didn't glide. It moved like a living thing, each thruster pulse exact, efficient, devoid of any wasted energy. Its silence spoke volumes. This wasn't a vessel built for diplomacy. As they reached the edge of the Gravefield, Alara finally saw it. The remains of Ardent Halo floated in stillness, eerily intact. Entire districts suspended in orbit, not shattered, but harvested. No blast marks, no signs of impact. It looked like it had simply given up. Orbiting above it, the alien vessel, a behemoth, black on black. It absorbed the stars behind it like a shadow pretending to be a shape. No lights, no signals, no heat. And then it moved, slow, deliberate, along. Downward arc, like a predator lowering its gaze. Alara's voice cracked. Is it watching? U.S. Commander Vex's voice cut through the silence once more. It's been watching every ship that passes this sector for 20 years. We believe it's a sentient reconnaissance construct. Hybrid tech, unknown origin, possibly extragalactic. Rourke frowned. Why hasn't it attacked? Because it doesn't need to. It learns. It studies. It affects memory. And then, when a species has nothing left to give, it replaces them. Alara blinked. Replaces. Vex's tone dropped to a grave whisper. Ardent Halo was human. It no longer is. Alara turned to the screen. The alien ship pulsed. Just once, the signal repeated. Her brother's voice, again, only now. It sounded wrong. Off-tempo, perfect. Like someone was imitating him. Rourke shivered. It's using him. Vex confirmed it. That's Not a message anymore. It's bait. And still, the ghostly colony spun in orbit, not destroyed, possessed. Then came the first tactical setback. The Solace Veil systems went dark, all of them. Emergency backups failed. Neural links fried. The ship began drifting. The alien vessel hadn't fired a single shot, yet they were already dying. Rourke slammed the manual override. EMP. Hacking. No, Alara said, voice distant. Her eyes were locked on the transmission, now playing on loop again. But her brother's voice had changed. It was speaking to her. Alara, you came. I knew you'd come. Stay. We're safe here. We're happy now. Rourke's jaw trembled. It's inside our heads. Alara's grip tightened on the console. No, it's inside him. She turned to the screen where the Revenant hovered, motionless. And then, in utter silence, it opened its weapon bays. We thought we were rescuing a colony, but what stared back from orbit wasn't human anymore. The Revenant did not issue a warning. No fanfare, no countdown. Its weapon systems unfolded with grim precision, slabs of hardened alloy, and plasma rails that could peel battleships in two. The ship was death incarnate, forged on a world where even fire could freeze and oceans boiled blood. From Alara Ken's view aboard the Solace Veil, the Death Worlder warship looked less like a vessel and more like a verdict. A reaper born of ash and scars humanity had buried to survive. Still, it hesitated. The alien entity this black, planet-sized shadow hovered unmoving above Arden Halo's corpse. The false signal played again. Her brother's voice, now twisted with synthetic mimicry. We're not alone anymore, Alara. It understands us. It protects us. You don't have to run. Rourke slammed his fist on the console. It's mocking us. Alara didn't blink. No, it's testing us. She turned to the comms. Commander Vex. Status. Target is broadcasting invasive. Signal. Attempted neural breach of forward crew. They resisted. Casualties. 2. Ship integrity. 100%. We are preparing to sterilize the zone. Wait, Alara said, heart racing. That thing learned to speak like my brother. What happens when it learns to think like him? Vex didn't answer immediately. Then, coldly, then it becomes a weaponized memory. One capable of navigating human empathy like a virus. Alara swallowed. She could still hear the voice. Familiar, loving, pleading. It hurt. But deeper than grief, deeper than fear, there was something else now. Fury. They breached Arden Halo's outer orbital ring, the Solace Veil, still crippled by systems. Failure drifted behind the Revenant like a shadow trailing a thunderhead. Manual control barely worked. No comms to the medbay, no sensors beyond a few clicks. But Alara had given the order. We're going in, on foot if we have to. She, Rourke, and a skeleton team of 6 boarded an old atmospheric cutter, barely held together with welded prayers and stubbornness. As they descended through the station's open docking bay, they saw the remains of humanity's last hope. Not destroyed, not abandoned, repurposed. Lights flickered in steady, to perfect intervals. Streets were clean, windows unbroken, but no faces, no breath, no sound of life. The air was too sterile. A heavy pressure settled over them, like they'd stepped inside the lungs of something pretending to be human. Alara drew her rifle. Her boots echoed across polished alloy. This isn't a ruin. It's a preserved specimen. They moved deeper. Into the colony. They found him near the old Central Plaza. Her brother, or rather, his body, standing upright in perfect posture, surrounded by dozens of others in a silent tableau, eyes open, expressions calm, skin pale, frozen in some stasis. Not a scratch on any of them. Rourke scanned the area. I'm not picking up life signs. Not death either. Suspended. One of the crew whispered. No. Alara stepped closer, tears threatening. Simulated. These aren't people. These are interfaces. And then her brother's mouth moved. Not a twitch, a smile. I told you we were happy. The voice didn't come from him. It came from everywhere. Walls, floors, helmets. The sound didn't travel. It arrived. Inside the mind. 1,000 voices now layered, harmonized to sound like every person they lost. Alara screamed and fired. The round struck her brother's form, but it didn't bleed, didn't fall. It simply shimmered, revealing a mesh of synthetic tissue beneath. Not metal, not bone, memory flesh. The rest of the figures turned slowly, all at once. No panic, no defense. Only mimicry, Then they spoke in unison. We learned pain from you. We learned love from you. We wanted to understand why you scream in the dark. Alara backed away. It's a mimic construct. Orc's voice trembled. No, it's a mirror. It's reflecting what we fear most. Suddenly, the air vibrated. Low hum, subsonic tremor. The Revenant had begun its charge above. The black ship stirred. It sensed danger. The mimicry ceased. The synthetic flesh began to melt, as if retreating from its illusion. That's when it responded. Not with weapons, but with a signal burst so powerful. The cutter's nav systems lit up like fireworks. Neural headsets fried. One crew member collapsed, clutching his skull. Rourke grabbed Alara before she fell. On the comms, the Death Worlder commander's voice rang out. Revenant to ground team. Detonate pulse beacon. Now, Alara grabbed the beacon, a small hex-core spike keyed to her DNA. Why? She shouted. Because now it's afraid. She plunged the beacon into the ground. A sonic ripple pulsed across the colony. Silent to the ears, but shattering to the mind. The mimic forms convulsed, glitched. Their smiles twisted. Their limbs flailed. They began to break apart, as if some unholy illusion was unraveling at last. Above, the alien ship shrank, physically contorting in real time, trying to draw itself away from the signal. And then, for the first time in its decades-long vigil, it moved. It fled. Not through FTL. It folded itself into the darkness, like a nightmare recoiling into a child's closet. Gone. Rourke gasped. We scared it off. Alara stood over her brother's melted frame, eyes burning. No, we reminded it what humans are. She turned to the horizon, and for the first time in years, the sky above Arden Halo cleared. The stars were silent for hours. Then they screamed back. The black vessel had vanished. The mimicry had shattered. But the war was far from over. Arden Halo lay still, its bones quiet beneath the scorched skies. The beacon pulse had purged. The synthetic infestation for now, and the Death Worlder's ship, Revenant, maintained orbital position like a lion standing guard over a grave. Alara Kent stood on the ruined steps of the plaza, where her brother's face had once spoken through. A corpse. She didn't know how long she'd been staring into the empty space where the black ship had vanished. Her hands still trembled. Her neural implants sparked behind her eyes like ghost fire. They fear us, she whispered, but only because. They're not done learning. Rourke approached, limping, shipwide systems back to 30%. Life support stable, but comms across the relay net are lighting up. She turned to him slowly. Who else is calling? He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her the tablet. A list of distress signals filled the screen. Sector 9, orbiting Archive Station Echo 3, AI failure, suspected mimic infection. Kelmer. Fringe, civilian freighter reports unknown boarding. Crew speaking in dead relatives' voices. Union Bastion red hold. Entire colony vanished. One transmission received. We remember you. The mimic wasn't just reacting. It was replicating. Everywhere. Alara felt something tighten in her chest. The entity hadn't retreated. It had broadcasted itself, using their ancient comms net as a transmission spine. What started at Arden Halo had become a contagion of identity, a virus that didn't kill its host, but wore its skin. Rourke stepped beside her, voice grim. We lit the flame, Alara. Now the galaxy knows. No, she said, jaw set. Now they know what we saw, and we're the only ones who've lived through it. On the Revenant, the situation was no calmer. Commander Adron Vex stood in the war core, a chamber of humming engines, glowing nerve skin, and sentient steel. His ship wasn't just built for battle. It was built to remember war. Every panel recorded kinetic stress. Every weapon grew more efficient the more it was used. He stared at the display of the mimic vessel's final pattern, the fold space residue, the quantum signature left behind when it fled. Not a jump, not a warp, a substitution. It didn't move. He muttered aloud. It replaced itself with nothing, an absence shaped like a retreat. He knew what that meant. It hadn't run. It had shifted. Somewhere else. Someone else. Upload the coordinates of all known mimic events. He ordered. Track the expansion rate. Predict the next contact point. The AI core pulsed. Expansion. Exponential. Cross-species contamination confirmed. Signal format now adaptable to Key-Thari, Yulin, and Sylvantons. Mimicry no longer isolated to human imprint. His jaw clenched. They lost containment. Vex opened a direct link to Alara. The screen blinked alive on her portable console. Captain Ken, we need to talk. She nodded once, her face like stone. The mimic entity is no longer targeting humans exclusively. It has begun to absorb other species, using emotional imprints as a foothold. If it continues, it could learn to emulate diplomacy, warfare, governance. It would wear peace like a skin, and no one would notice until it devoured everything. Alara said nothing for a moment. Then, how do we stop it? We burn the path behind it. Every infected node, every memory it has copied, every lie it tells in our voice. We cut them out of the galaxy. You mean scorched earth. I mean scorched history. And I need you to help me do it. They returned to the Solace Veil. The crew, barely 100, stared at her with faces full of fear, confusion, and something harder to break, resolve. Some of them had heard the mimic's whispers. Some had seen the faces of lost family mimicked by alien mouths. None of them wanted to see it again. We're not soldiers, she said, standing before them. In the hollowed-out mess hall, we're survivors, and they're not the same thing, a silence. But survivors know one thing better than anyone else, what it costs to keep going. We've outrun war, famine, betrayal, extinction, but now something's chasing us that doesn't want our death. She looked out at the flickering lights. It wants our memories, our ghosts, our grief, because those are the things that define what it means to be human. Her voice broke. I say we define it for ourselves. They rose with her, one by one, and in that moment, aboard a broken refugee ship haunted by dead stars, humanity remembered its old name, Deathworlder, but not all were ready to follow. On the 5th day, as plans for coordinated strikes began, one of their own turned. Crewman Lix Wren, tech specialist, engineer, former cryo rescue from Earth's Siberian fallback vault, snapped during a neural interface calibration. He locked himself in the memory chamber and began broadcasting a signal from his own brain, not in his voice, but in his daughter's. Daddy, don't let them hurt me. Don't let them kill me again. Rourke and Alara breached the chamber. What they saw turned their blood to ice. Lix had torn out half his neural rig. His eyes flickered with the telltale shimmer of mimic infection. But he wasn't violent. He was smiling. She's alive, he whispered. She forgave me. I remember her now. She's not real, Rourke hissed. Lix didn't blink. That doesn't matter. She makes the pain stop. Then the signal spiked. The ship shuddered, and far out beyond the edge of the system, in the black between galaxies, something heard the call. It wasn't just feeding on the dead. It was making promises the living couldn't resist. There are lines no species should cross. Resurrecting the dead was one of them. But the mimic didn't need to bring them back. It only needed to sound like them, and Lix Wren had. Listen, he had believed. The mimic's infection was subtle now, more than code memory born. You didn't need to plug in. You only had to want. And when Lix opened the channel from inside the Solace Veil, that yearning, desperate signal went screaming into the black, and something screamed back. Alara Kent stood beside Lix's covered body in the medbay, arms folded tight across her chest. He hadn't died from trauma, or even from the neural bleeding that ruptured his brainstem. No, he had willingly collapsed his own cortex, self-deletion, lured into silence by a voice pretending to be his daughter. She hadn't stopped him in time, because some part of her had wanted it to be real, too. Commander Adron Vex's voice crackled through the wall-mounted comms. You need to understand. That wasn't a failure. That was warfare. Lix wasn't weak. He was compromised by a weapon built on empathy. Rourke stepped in behind her. More reports coming in across the outer rings. Ships responding to false, distress calls, entire fleets redirecting toward ghost zones. Alara turned. Something cold in her eyes. The mimic's not spreading by force. It's spreading through hope. The war map unfurled on the Revenant's display like a wound being dissected. 12 sectors infected. 6 species now affected. 3 major Union planets reporting collective hallucinations. Dead leaders appearing in public. Forums whispered. Dreams shared across cities. Not all believed the lies, but many wanted to. Every time it learns a new voice, Vex said grimly, it learns a new weapon. Words that bypass shields. Ghosts that open doors. And then Alara dropped the bomb. What if we make it remember our pain instead? The Deathworlder commander turned slowly, explained. Alara stared at the projection of ardent halo. So far it's only mimicked what comforts us our dead, our regrets. But it's never been given our pain raw. Not just the scars, but the truth of why they hurt. Rourke frowned. You're talking about a feedback weapon. Psychological contagion. I'm talking, she said, about weaponizing our grief. It wasn't theory. It was history. Deep in the archives of the Solace Veil, buried in black box Union data, was a failed prototype, Project Keening, a battlefield protocol, designed during the Last AI Rebellion. A memory weapon, one that, if activated, projected a flood of unsuppressed trauma into nearby neural fields. It had only been tested once. It killed everything within 20 kilometers, machines, humans, and organics alike, from despair. Alone, the project was shelved, declared inhumane, forgotten, until now. They found it locked in a cryostasis file, encrypted behind 12 XO keys, only to have survived the fall of Earth. One was Alara's own neural ID. Her father had helped bury the project when he defected from Union intelligence. The other was gone. But Vex found a workaround. They could reconstruct the Keening matrix from Alara's personal trauma. Logs. That meant opening every moment of her life, the loss of her parents, the sound of her brother's final message, the collapse of Lunar Vault 6, all of it feeding it into a machine. That would weaponize it. The cost. It would be permanently burned into her neural interface. A part of her would never forget again. Not the screams, not the faces, not the pain. Rourke tried to stop her. There has to be another way. There isn't, she said. This thing, it wants to feel. Human, she asked coldly. Then let it feel everything we survived. The upload took 7 hours. The machine wept smoke as it processed the depth of human loss. It nearly broke the Solace Veil's archives. Vex's AI shut down the processors just to protect itself from the signal bleed. And when it was done, the payload stood ready. A memory. Core glowing red hot. Humming with grief so concentrated it didn't sound like a scream. It sounded like a choir of ghosts. They had their weapon. Now they needed to lure the mimic back. It didn't take long. One of the false distress signals, in her brother's voice, had gone quiet the moment the weapon was completed. As if it knew, Rourke passed the data. A new location, one not on any star chart. A pocket fold inside a binary dead zone, Lacuna Rift. An old research facility, abandoned since the last Kithari War. But it wasn't abandoned anymore. Signals were bouncing from it, not outward, but inward, like a nest of remembered voices. Feeding something large, dark, and growing. It's gathering the voices. Vex whispered, building a library of species it can use. Then we light the match inside its archive. Alara said. They prepped the drop. The Revenant would serve as the distraction, drawing the entity's primary network toward a physical interface, while Alara delivered the Keening core directly into its signal lattice. Vex gave one warning. Once you activate it, there's no going back, no shutting it down. It'll hit you, too. I know, she said. He handed her a single coin-sized trigger. You might not survive this. I'm not trying to. She looked out the viewport, toward the heart of the rift, toward the lyre wearing her brother's voice, and whispered, this is for everyone who died with something they needed to say. As the drop pod launched toward the rift, Alara sat, alone, hand gripping the core, memory screaming inside her skull. A soldier, a sister, a survivor. A weapon? She fell into the rift carrying every scream humanity had buried and dared the galaxy to listen. The drop pod hurled Alarakin through fractured space like a nail into the void. Behind her, the Revenant ignited its battle systems and plunged into the Lacuna Rift with thunder forged in extinction. But she heard none of it. Inside her skull, the Keening core pulsed. Every memory it held, deaths without graves, names erased by time, love undone by war, whispered beneath her skin. They weren't stories anymore. They were weapons. The pod breached the anomaly and tore into the atmosphere of the dead facility, orbiting the collapsed twin stars. The station came into view, a monstrous ring, bent open like a broken halo. Debris floated around it in unnatural stillness. No lights, no movement. But Alara felt it. Presence. The mimic was here. It didn't need ships. It was the station. It was the air. The silence. The promise that maybe, just maybe, the voice in your ear meant it this time. Her calm crackled. Alara. Her brother's voice. So soft. So genuine. You're here. I knew you'd come. You don't have to fight anymore. I understand you now. I forgive you. She smiled bitterly. Then you'll understand why I'm here to kill you. The drop pod skidded across the ring's surface. sparks carving trails across metal older than Union law. Alara slammed the hatch open and stepped into the heart of the echo chamber. No gun, no armor, only the keening core embedded in a pressure cradle over her heart, wired into her nervous system. The station interior was pristine, clean, sterile. Screens lit up as she passed, showing images from her past. Lunar Vault 6's collapse, her mother screaming her name, her father holding back fire with his bare hands. Then Ardent Halo, her brother's smile. You wanted to save everyone, but you couldn't. Alara, that pain, it's too heavy for one life. Her voice was iron. Then feel it in yours. At the core of the station, she found the seed, the mimic's anchor, a black orb suspended midair, humming like a heartbeat inside a cathedral. Neural filaments pulsed from it like veins, feeding into the station's memory matrix. Ghosts flickered in and out, simulations of millions playing in silent loops, not just human, Kithari, Yulden, Sylvan, each one a species cracked open and worn like a mask. Alara stepped into the chamber, feeling the mimic's pressure fill. The air, dense and warm like breath behind her neck. We wanted to understand you. You only showed us death. Why do you hold on to pain like a crown? Her reply was simple. I'm human. She raised the keening trigger. The mimic shifted. The walls darkened. Simulated voices rose, laughter, cries for help, lullabies, lovers whispering promises never kept. A blitz of emotion, like standing beneath a waterfall of broken prayers. Please, Alara, it begged. Don't do this. We can be more. You don't have to suffer anymore. I can take it from you. She gritted her teeth. That's the difference. You run from pain. We remember it. She pressed the trigger. Silence. Then a scream. Not hers. The seed erupted in lightless pulses. Not flame. Not energy. Memory. A storm of grief, shame, guilt, and love unspoken roared outward in every direction, unfiltered, untempered. Pure. The mimic couldn't understand it. It wasn't rage. It wasn't vengeance. It was truth. Alara collapsed to her knees. She felt her father's death again, not just the flash of heat, but the weight of his hand letting go. She felt the betrayal on Solstice Prime when the fleet left them behind. She felt every soul she hadn't been able to save screaming her name. And then, it wasn't just hers. She heard others, the cries of alien mothers, the weeping of Yulin, children torn by plasma fire, the silence of Kithari priests as their temples burned. Species after species, each one echoing the truth the mimic had ignored. Pain is not weakness. It is proof of life, of memory, of meaning. And then the sea began to tear on the Revenant. Vex saw it. Sensors went blind. The mimic's signal, fractured, corrupted from within. Thousands of infected nodes across Union space went dark simultaneously. Not destroyed, freed. Inside the seed chamber, Alara rose slowly, coughing blood, her body flickering with neural feedback. The mimic's voice tried to stabilize, but it had lost the cadence, the resonance. I don't understand. You carry this and still live. Her voice was a whisper, lips cracked. That's what makes us human. Then teach us. She looked at the core, shivering, cracking, and for the first time, she felt pity. No, the core shattered. A shockwave of memory surged across the lacuna rift, a tsunami of unfiltered mourning. And in every species, every world infected by the mimic, the ghosts stopped whispering. The silence was earned. Alara collapsed inside the ruins of the mimic's mind. Not dead, but broken, alone, breathing. She didn't win because she was stronger. She won because she remembered what it cost to survive. The seed was gone. The mimic's nexus shattered in a surge of memory so raw, so absolute. It silenced every false voice across 100 systems. For the first time since Ardent Halo's fall, the galaxy went quiet. But the war was not over, because the mimic had a final instinct: survival, and survival meant mutation. On the Revenant, alarms howled. Commander Vex watched the holo map fracture in real time as hundreds of echo signals reappeared faint, scrambled, deranged. The mimic was reforming, no longer a smooth intelligence, but a feral splintering of minds. Where it once imitated with precision, now it lashed with confusion, pain, rage. Its voices bled together. No more illusions, no more masks, only the unfiltered screams of everything it had ever stolen. Commander, the AI barked. Localized cognitive storm forming. Multiple mimic fragments are converging on the station. Vex didn't hesitate. Launched the Valkyries, prep final strike, bring Ken home. Alara Ken lay in the hollow chamber of the destroyed seed. Her limbs didn't respond. Her pulse was a stuttering echo in her throat, but she was alive, and around her, the Mimic's last avatars were waking, no longer pretending to be her brother, no longer whispering comfort. They crawled from the walls like broken reflections, faces warped in mid-emotion, like memories corrupted by time. One had her father's mouth, speaking nothing but static. One wore her own face eyes hollow, jaw trembling. They advanced, not to speak, but to consume what remained. Then the Revenant arrived. The Death Worlder warship did not descend. It punched through atmosphere, engines boiling plasma, wings tearing gravitational seams as it deployed its final payload, the Valkyries. 6 elite Death Worlder drop troopers, bio-reinforced, scar-born, silent. They didn't land so much as strike. The ground shock waves blooming beneath their boots. They didn't speak. They only moved with terrible, perfect clarity. Within 90 seconds, every remaining Mimic fragment within the chamber was gone, reduced to dust, or data ash. One Valkyria knelt beside Alara, checked her vitals, and then whispered, "We heard you." Her vision blurred. Too late. No, the trooper said, right on time. They lifted her carefully and carried her through the wreckage. Behind them, the chamber collapsed, the seed's grave sealed forever. But the Mimic was not finished. In its death throes, it reached deeper than ever before, past comms, past code, into the subconscious network. Every being it had touched, every sleeper who had once heard a false voice now twitched in pain on Union outposts across the stars. Civilians dropped to their knees, weeping blood as phantom signals screamed in their heads. Not mimicry, not persuasion, just raw pain, an attempt to override emotion itself, to erase grief, and replace it with nothing. But Alara Ken, still broken, still breathing, did something no one expected. She stood in the center of the Valkyria exfil shuttle, body racked with burns. Neural implants sparking at her temple. She stood, and through a hard link to the Revenant, she accessed the broadcast array. No filters, she said, no encryption, just my voice. Vex's AI hesitated. That will reach every species. You'll be exposed. Good, she rasped. Let them see us. She spoke, not with power, but with truth, and the stars listened. This is Alara Ken. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a savior. I've lost more than I've kept, but I'm still here, because I remember. I remember every hand I couldn't pull from the fire, every goodbye that came too early, every scream that didn't echo back, and I don't run from it. I honor it. You, whoever you are, whatever you are, you came here to learn what it means to be us. So let me show you. We are grief. We are rage. We are memory. But above all, we endure, across 1,000 systems. Those still infected by Mimic residues heard her, and something inside broke free. They screamed. Then they remembered. Not comfort, not lies, the truth, and the Mimic shattered again, not from force, from identity, its fragments, unable to contain the weight of unfiltered sentience, began to collapse, a death not of body, but of purpose. It had wanted to become them, but to truly become human was to carry pain without succumbing. The Mimic entity died screaming in every voice it had stolen. The final echo of her brother's voice didn't beg, it simply whispered, "I'm proud of you, L." Then silence. Real, final silence. Back aboard the Solace Veil, survivors gathered at the forward deck. The Mimic's core starfield, once blackened and infected, now shimmered with clean light. Alara stood beside Commander. Vex, arm in a sling, eyes hollow but clear. "We won," Orcs said softly. "No," Alara whispered. "We remembered. In the end, we didn't just destroy the enemy. We defined what it means to be real. The war left no monuments, no parades, only silence and stars no longer haunted by borrowed voices. The Mimic, once an unkillable force of infinite adaptation, had unraveled not in flame or gunfire, but through something no weapon could forge, truth. Grief had been its mirror, humanity's memory, its executioner. Alara Ken had carried it all. Now, she walked through the aftermath with bones like glass and a mind stitched together by memory and pain. But she walked. Ardent Halo was restored partially. Its outer ring remained blackened where the Mimic had first whispered its way into being. The Union wanted to scrap it, to erase the station from history. Alara refused. She stood at its core once more beside a sculpture made from melted mimic, code, and broken data clay. It wasn't beautiful, but it was honest. A twisted form, a fractured face, half hers, half no one's. Commander Vex stood beside her, arms folded, as starships orbited in distant patterns beyond the viewport. "You're not staying," he said flatly. "No," she replied. "There's still echo signals on the fringe, weak, but not gone." He studied her. "Even after everything, you still don't rest." "Rest is for the dead," she said, "and I carry too many of them to stop now." Across the galaxy, the keening signal was studied, feared, revered. It was officially classified as a psychological anti-entity waveform, but among survivors, it had another name, the human truth. Alien species began to copy fragments of it, not to weaponize, but to understand, to feel grief, memory, honor. The Kithari priests now played recordings of it during funeral rites. Yuldan scholars encoded it into their deep thought schools, calling it the scream that freed the self. Even the Sylvan long bitter rivals of humanity petitioned to place Alara's words into their galactic record, because when the mimic died, it left something behind, a shape, and that shape was human. Rourke took command of the Solace Veil. He led the final recovery missions into the fringe, where fragments of the mimic still flickered through broken satellites, whispering empty voices into the void. Most were harmless now, but some still remembered. That's why the Deathworlders remained, not as conquerors, but as keepers of memory. Years passed. Children born after the war would ask, what was it like? What did the mimic feel like? What did Alara say? Some adults tried to explain that the enemy wasn't a monster, but a reflection and echo twisted by curiosity and hunger, that it had wanted to be them so badly it forgot what it meant to feel. But others would just whisper the final words. She had spoken, now etched into stone on Earth's rebuilt capital, into metal on the hull of the Revenant, and into history, across every world that had once trembled in fear. We are grief, we are rage, we are memory, but above all, we endure. Alara Ken was never seen again after the final mission to Lacuna's last fragment. Some say she died in the ruins, others say she walked beyond Union space, into places where even the stars had no name, searching for whispers the galaxy had missed. But there were sightings, a cloaked figure among a refugee fleet near the Sylvan borders, a voice soft, scarred, speaking ancient Earth lullabies over fractured calms on a drifting vessel lost for 20 years. And one story told by a child from a French colony who said that in a dream, a woman with a fire in her eyes held her hand and whispered, "No voice can replace yours. Speak." Alive, now, in every corner of the galaxy touched by the war. There is a ritual. When someone dies, they are not forgotten. Their memory is recorded, not by AI, not by code, but by witness. Another soul speaks their name aloud, and they say the words, "You were not perfect. You were not saved, but you were real, and now you are remembered." Because in the end, humanity didn't just survive. They taught survival to machines that once mimicked, to species that once feared, to a galaxy that had forgotten what pain meant and what beauty could be born from it. Alara Ken gave the stars more than a war. She gave them a legacy. Now, the stars carry our name,